My best friend betrayed me by getting pregnant by my husband. And then my own mother tried to convince me to give them full custody of my children. My husband Mark and I started dating when I was 21, and he was 23. We were together for almost 2 years before he proposed. We have now been married for 12 years, and have 2 children. During the second year of our relationship, Mark introduced me to his mother, Linda. I liked her right away, and tried my best to make a good impression. But unfortunately, the feeling was not mutual. The thing is, Linda had been a widow for a long time. Her husband died of a heart attack many years ago. She raised Mark on her own, so they were extremely close. You could say he was a bit of a mama's boy, and he was afraid to introduce me to her because he desperately sought her approval in everything. The main reason Linda disliked me was because I came from a well-off upper-middle-class family, and my parents owned several businesses. I grew up in fairly comfortable conditions. My parents paid for my college education, and bought me my first car so I could commute to work. At the same time, they taught me independence and how to build my own life. I always worked hard to support myself, and after graduating college, I never once asked my parents for financial help. Unlike me, my husband had a much harder life. His father served in the military and was rarely home. After his death, Mark and Linda became inseparable. Linda was an alcoholic, so from a young age, Mark had to take care of his mother. He got a job at McDonald's while still a teenager to earn extra money. Later, he dropped out of college because he didn't like his communications major. He told his mother how miserable he was during that time. Without finishing his education, he struggled to find a job, so he started looking for ways to earn money that didn't require a degree. That's how he became a freelance writer, and surprisingly, he made decent money doing it. He loved traveling and spent several years as a digital nomad before meeting me and settling down. Throughout all that time, his mother kept asking him to send her money, and he gladly did, even though it seriously damaged. As our relationship became more serious, I finally decided to tell him about my family and our wealth. He didn't believe me at first, but was shocked when he Googled my family. Mark got angry that I had hidden this for so long and accused me of not trusting him. I tried to explain that in the past, many people wanted to be with me because of my family, so I learned not to reveal the truth about my financial situation right away. He understood and generally accepted it, but sometimes he would make digs at me, saying that I had never had to try hard, and that I would never know what it truly meant to work hard. This hurt me deeply because despite my parents' support, I worked extremely hard to build my career. I worked in influencer and brand promotion, and that was how I fully supported my lifestyle without my parents' help. Mark never understood this, and this should have been my first red flag when we decided to move in together. Mark immediately stated that we should move in with me because I had more living space. I agreed and then raised the issue of splitting the rent, but he didn't like that. He started saying that he earned too little as a freelance writer. Since I came from a wealthy family, I should prove my love by helping him, meaning paying not only his share of the rent, but also all the bills. I said that this was unfair, but that I was willing to cover the rent if he paid for his personal expenses. This sent him into a rage. He raised his voice and went on a tirade about how selfish I was, and how I was refusing to pay his bills, which supposedly showed what a cruel person I was. We argued for a long time, and in the end I gave in. I had to restrict myself in many ways to cover all our expenses, but I was madly in love. Meanwhile, Mark continued sending money to his mother every month and buying her expensive gifts. Every time I pointed out that he had money for his mother, but not for our bills, he got angry and said that his mother needed money more than we did, because she was a lonely elderly woman. I felt ashamed and stopped bringing it up. When Mark proposed to me, I was ecstatic. Honestly, looking back now, I realized that he put in minimal effort. I hoped that at least this time he wouldn't be stingy and would plan something special. But according to him, proposing in our backyard was a great idea. To his credit, he did ask my parents for their blessing, as a gentleman should. My mother, who adored Mark, suggested that he ask my best friend Sarah for help planning the proposal. He agreed, and together they came up with the brilliant idea to propose to me right in our backyard in front of my entire family and friends. Sarah had been my best friend since school. Our mothers had been friends since childhood, so we became friends too. We always supported each other. She was like a sister to me, my soulmate. We did literally everything together. Her mother adored me just as much as my mother loved Sarah, like her own daughter. When I started dating Mark, I of course introduced him to Sarah, and they became friends as well. She helped him not only organize the proposal, but also choose the ring. Honestly, the unexpected proposal caught me off guard. But seeing my whole family gathered to celebrate the day made it easier. Although I was a little disappointed that Mark proposed simply in our backyard. The first people to hug and congratulate me were my mother, Sarah, and Sarah's mother. Linda, Mark's mother, was also happy for us and told me that she had high expectations of me as a daughter-in-law, and hoped that I would do everything possible to make her son happy. It was a happy day for all of us. Eventually, Mark and I got married, and even after the wedding I offered to pay all the household expenses while he didn't spend a single cent on me. I paid for our weekly dates and our annual vacations because Mark insisted that he was saving money for our future. When I got pregnant with our first child, Oliver, I had to quit my job because the pregnancy was very difficult. Mark was unhappy about this, and started arguing with me, saying that I had to work, otherwise we wouldn't have enough money to support the child. I cried a lot, and that was the first time I truly opened up to my parents and told them about our situation. My mother supported Mark instead of me, saying that he was right, and that hundreds of women continue working during pregnancy. My father, however, was furious. He called Mark and told him exactly what he thought of him, then firmly said that it was time for him to start acting like a man and take care of his family. He warned Mark that if he continued treating me this way, he would not allow his daughter to suffer, and that it would be better for us to divorce. Mark clearly became nervous after hearing this from my father, although I myself did not want a divorce. Before the wedding, at my father's insistence, we had signed a prenuptial agreement, and Mark understood perfectly well that in case of divorce, he would lose access to a luxurious lifestyle. He would lose the house and the expensive car, both of which were registered in my name. So for the first time ever, he stopped sending money to his mother and began paying the bills. I still paid the rent because I had enough savings, but Linda was furious. She was used to living off her son, and when the flow of money stopped, she blamed me for it. When I gave birth to Oliver, I was incredibly happy. Everyone came to the hospital to congratulate us on the birth of the baby. Sarah stayed with me for several days until I recovered and was able to return home. Mark, on the other hand, was busy with work and refused to take care of me and the baby. At home, I was extremely anxious as a new mother. During that time, my parents and Sarah's mother helped me as much as they could. Linda did absolutely nothing. Every time she came to visit her grandson, she only made unpleasant comments about me. She said I needed to lose weight, or that I should immediately calm the baby if he cried. Her remarks were always directed at me and never once at her son, who did absolutely nothing to help me. After Oliver's birth, I was overwhelmed by extreme exhaustion and loneliness. At the time, I didn't know it yet, but I was suffering from postpartum depression, which many mothers experience, although few people talk about it. Despite all my attempts to explain to Mark that I needed support and help raising the child, he remained distant and unwilling to do anything. He said that caring for the child was exclusively my responsibility as the mother. He had no intention of helping because he didn't know what to do or how to do it. While I was trying to care for a newborn, manage the household, and fight postpartum depression, Mark's refusal to participate in any of this only made my condition worse. He wouldn't even agree to change a diaper or feed the baby. Every day, the burden of responsibility grew heavier, and my depression intensified, becoming more and more unbearable. I felt like I was drowning in endless expectations and unmet needs. At some point, I decided to open up to my parents and tell them about my condition. My father reacted with understanding, but my mother refused to believe that anything was wrong with me. She said postpartum depression didn't exist, and that I had to be strong for my child and overcome everything on my own. When I complained to her that Mark refused to help me, she only scolded me, saying that he was the father, but I was the one who had to be a better mother. It was painful to realize that even my own mother couldn't see how hard things were for me. I felt like I was drowning because of my mother's disbelief, Mark's indifference, and Linda's constant cutting remarks. The depression wouldn't let go. My only support was Sarah. I told her about my marriage, and she always listened, sympathized, and supported me. She also said that Mark was a terrible husband and father, and was angry with him for his behavior. It was easier knowing that besides my father, I also had Sarah, especially during such a difficult time. A year later, another shock awaited me. I found out I was pregnant again. It was an accident, because I definitely didn't want a second child so soon, but I decided to trust God's plan and keep the baby. Mark, to put it mildly, was furious. He said that we couldn't afford a second child. We had a huge fight, and in the end I realized that I had to return to work. I contacted my former boss, who gladly took me back as a freelancer until a permanent position became available. The second pregnancy was also difficult, but this time I already had additional responsibility as a parent, so I was determined to get through everything. This time, when I started earning money again, I made a decision that I would no longer transfer my entire salary into our joint account. I needed to think about my future and the future of my children. So I started saving 50% of my salary and sending the remaining half into the shared budget. Once I started earning again, Mark became lazier with each passing day. He suddenly began complaining that he hated his job and wanted to quit. I tried to talk him out of it, reminding him that he didn't have a degree and that he should hold on to a well-paying job. This made him angry because he hated being reminded that he dropped out of college. Mark said that since I had taken a break, he also had the right to do so. I argued back, explaining that my break consisted of carrying a child and going through a difficult pregnancy. Despite our arguments, Mark still quit his job, saying that we had enough savings and that now that I was earning, he could rest for a bit. He spent all day playing video games while I took care of the child, managed the household, and worked. I left Oliver with my parents when I went to work because my mother didn't mind watching him. When I came home and picked up my son, Mark was still sitting on the couch, completely absorbed in his games. This went on for quite a long time, and eventually I got tired of carrying all the parental responsibilities on my own. In a fit of rage, I demanded that he start looking for a new job. Mark didn't like that, and began going to his friend Ryan, where they spent hours playing video games together. Ryan was divorced. His wife had cheated on him and left. Because of that, he hated all women. That was exactly why I didn't like being around him, and disapproved of Mark spending so much time with him. But Mark started going to Ryan's place more and more often, and our arguments only became more frequent. I felt like a single mother because Mark literally didn't help with anything, but I held on for the sake of the children. When I gave birth to our second child, Ethan, Mark was so busy that he ignored my many calls and messages when my labor started. In the end, he simply missed them all. I never once suspected him of anything bad, even though the warning signs were already obvious. Sarah didn't answer either when I called her, so my parents had to take me to the hospital. She came the next day to visit me and the baby, and apologized for not being there, explaining that she was stuck at work. At the time, I didn't think much of it. After Ethan's birth, I finally gave Mark an ultimatum. If he didn't return to work, I would pack my things and leave. This led to a huge fight, but I didn't care anymore. As a mother, I understood that I needed someone by my side who would be just as responsible, because it was simply impossible to cope alone. I told him that I wouldn't hold a grudge against him. He was free to do whatever he wanted, but I needed a partner who would participate in family life. To my surprise, Mark said that he would start looking for a job the very next day. I expected resistance or another scandal, but he unexpectedly agreed. Or at least, that's what it seemed like at the time. The next day, while my husband was in the shower, I was gathering his dirty clothes for the laundry when I suddenly heard the sound of a notification on his phone. I turned around and saw a message on the lock screen from a familiar number. My breath stopped, and my eyes widened in shock. I picked up the phone and opened the message. "When are you going to tell her? I'm pregnant, and I can't keep this a secret anymore." I froze in place, rereading those words over and over again. When Mark came out of the shower, he saw me standing there, motionless with his phone in my hands. He rushed toward me, trying to grab the device, but it was already too late. I dropped the laundry basket, walked up to him, and hit him across the face with all my strength. I didn't even think about it, as if someone else was controlling me. I was shaking with rage, and he stood there in shock, realizing that I had read the message. His eyes widened, and he began to stutter, trying to explain that it was all some kind of misunderstanding. I looked him straight in the eyes and told him that he was dead to me. Then I packed my things, my children's things, and took them to my parents' house. When they opened the door and saw me with the children in suitcases, they were shocked. At that moment, I couldn't hold it in anymore and burst into tears, telling them everything. I haven't stopped crying for 2 days because I simply can't believe that my life has been destroyed. I told my boss everything, and she generously allowed me to take a few days off. Honestly, I have no words. That's why I'm writing about this online. My best friend, whom I had been friends with for 20 years, betrayed me by sleeping with my husband, whom I had been married to for 12 years. And that's not all. Now she's pregnant. This means that my marriage to Mark is over. Mark and Sarah keep calling and texting me, begging me to at least listen to them, but I refuse. Mark begs me not to file for divorce, saying that I should think about our children. Update. Hi everyone. Thank you for the many messages and comments on my post. I know I haven't written for a month, but too many things were happening in my life, and I had to deal with all of it. I returned to work because, no matter what happened, I couldn't afford to take a long break. Honestly, work has become my salvation, and a way to distract myself. Many of you were right in thinking that Mark and Sarah had been sleeping together for a long time. Sarah sent me a long message saying that she never wanted this. But, supposedly, she fell in love with Mark, and now that she was expecting a child, she had to think about herself. That was supposedly why she had been trying to get Mark to confess to me. Mark, on the other hand, understood that he would lose access to a luxurious life. If we divorced, he knew he had made a mistake, and according to him, he only wanted to sleep with Sarah. But now that she was pregnant, he had no way out. He is begging me to forgive him. He even went as far as suggesting that I convince Sarah to get rid of the child so that we could raise one together. His delusional ideas and inflated sense of self-importance only fuel my rage even more. As for how it all started, it turned out that Mark had been complaining to Sarah behind my back for a long time, while spending entire days playing video games. He told her how hard marriage with me was because I forced him to look for a job. He said that Sarah understood him, and knew how to listen. And when he told his best friend Ryan about it, instead of stopping him, Ryan encouraged him, saying that Sarah was a real woman, unlike me. That's how they met for the first time under the pretense of just talking, but that two-faced snake decided to sleep with my husband. I have no idea what motivated Sarah, because she knew perfectly well what a terrible partner Mark was. But at this point I don't care anymore. In her message, Sarah also wrote that I should be happy because she had taken him off my hands. That I had wanted to leave him anyway, but didn't have the courage to do it. Maybe that was her plan from the very beginning. Who knows? Honestly, I'm glad she took that trash away, and now she can live her entire life regretting that she got involved with someone like Mark. I'm also almost certain that on the day I went into labor, they were together. That's why neither of them answered my calls. But even that wasn't the worst part. When I first told my parents about Mark and Sarah, my mother refused to believe me. My father, on the other hand, was furious. He called Mark and yelled at him for a full 15 minutes, even though I was crying at that moment. My mother tried to smooth things over, saying that maybe I was mistaken, and that Sarah couldn't have done that to me. Then I called Sarah's mother and told her everything. Unlike my mother, she was furious. She didn't doubt my words for a second, and immediately took my side, because she knew I would never make something like that up. She kept repeating how ashamed she was of her daughter and cried with me. She truly understood what kind of betrayal I had experienced. After talking to my father, I decided to file for divorce. We already have suitable lawyers, and thanks to the prenuptial agreement and Mark's infidelity, the whole process should go smoothly. The only possible difficulty might be the issue of child custody, But I'm confident that Mark won't want to take on any responsibility for them. So I have almost no doubt that I will get full custody. But what surprised me the most was my mother's reaction. She is categorically against my decision to divorce. When she realized that no matter how much she tried to persuade me, I wouldn't change my mind, she suddenly changed tactics and started saying that I should give full custody of the children to Mark. At first I thought she was joking, but she kept repeating it over and over again for several days. Today, I finally lost my temper and yelled at her, asking how she even dared to suggest something like that. But she didn't answer and simply walked out of the room. Her behavior is starting to seem very suspicious to me. Why does my own mother want me to give my children to a man who is incapable of taking care of them? I think it's time to sit down and have an honest conversation with her, and do it in my father's presence, to finally find out what's really on her mind. So before we move on to the next update, I suggest you write your version in the comments right now, explaining why mother is behaving this way. Because I think everyone would agree that this is completely abnormal behavior. Now let's move on to the next update. Second update. I decided not to delay the conversation with my mother any longer. I asked my father to be present because I felt that without him, she would either avoid the topic or try to manipulate the situation again. At first, she pretended not to understand what I wanted to talk about. She said I was overreacting, that divorce was a mistake, and that I was destroying my family with my own hands. When I reminded her of Mark's betrayal and Sarah's pregnancy, she brushed it off as men making mistakes. That was the moment I completely lost any remaining patience. I asked her directly why she wanted me to give full custody of my children to Mark. There was a long silence. My father looked at her and told her to answer honestly for once. Then she finally said it. She admitted that she had known about Mark's affair long before I did. According to her, Mark had come to her months ago, crying and saying that he felt misunderstood, pressured, and unhappy in the marriage. He told her that Sarah truly loved him, that she was pregnant, and that he was terrified of losing everything. Instead of telling me the truth, my mother chose to protect the family. She believed that if I didn't find out, everything would somehow resolve itself. She said she thought Mark would leave Sarah, that the pregnancy might not work out, and that our marriage could still be saved. My father was shocked. He asked her how she could hide something like that from her own daughter. She started crying and said she didn't want to see me alone with 2 children and no husband. Then things became even worse. She admitted that Mark had asked her for help. He wanted her to convince me not to divorce him, and if that failed, to convince me to give him full custody, so that he could raise the children properly, with Sarah. My mother said she believed him. She said that a child needed a complete family, and that Sarah would be a better mother than me because she would have more time and patience. I felt like the ground disappeared under my feet. I asked her if she understood what she was saying. That she was choosing a cheating husband and his mistress over her own daughter. She replied that she was just being realistic. At that moment, my father told her to stop. He said he had never been more ashamed in his life. He told her that what she did was a betrayal just as deep as Mark's. He then turned to me and promised that no matter what happened, he would support me fully. That he would help with the children, with the divorce, with everything. My mother tried to argue, saying that she was only thinking about the children's future. But my father told her that the conversation was over. I left that house shaking. Since that day, I have stopped all contact with my mother. She keeps calling and sending messages, saying that I misunderstood her, that she only wanted what was best. But I know the truth now. As for Mark, once he found out that my father was on my side, and that I had solid legal protection, his tone changed immediately. He stopped begging and started threatening me with court. That didn't last long. His lawyer contacted mine and quickly backed down when they realized how strong my case was, especially considering his infidelity and financial dependence. The divorce process is moving forward. I am exhausted, but for the first time in a long while, I feel clarity. I will protect my children at all costs. No matter who I have to cut off to do it. The divorce was finalized faster than I expected. Mark didn't fight as hard as he had threatened to. Once the reality set in child support, alimony, legal fees, and the responsibility of actually being a parent, his confidence disappeared. I was granted full custody of my children. Mark received limited visitation rights, which he rarely uses. Sarah gave birth 2 months later. From what I heard through mutual acquaintances, Mark quickly realized that starting a new life with her wasn't as easy or glamorous as he had imagined. Money became a constant issue. Mark struggled to find stable work, and Sarah, who had believed his promises, started to see the reality of the man she had chosen. They argue constantly. As for my mother, we still do not speak. She tried several times to show up unannounced, to fix things, but I made it clear that until she took full responsibility for her actions, there would be no relationship between us. My father divorced her. He said that once trust is broken on that level, it can never truly be restored. He now spends as much time as he can with me and the children. He helps, supports us emotionally and financially, and reminds me every day that I am not alone. As for me, I am slowly rebuilding my life. I went back to work full-time, started therapy, and focused on creating a peaceful, stable environment for my children. They are doing well. They laugh again. They feel safe. And that's all that matters. I don't hate Mark anymore. I don't hate Sarah either. They are simply no longer part of my life. Sometimes people reveal who they truly are only when things fall apart. And when they do, the strongest thing you can do is walk away and never look back.